Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the Detroit Lions 2018 NFL Draft Class based on analytics. And in this video, we're essentially going to go through all the Lions draft picks, looking at them through the lens of data to see what their potential is based on how past players performed in the data, in the production and athleticism data over the course of many draft classes. So if you're new to the channel, new to the work that I do, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So with all that stuff out of the way, let's start with the first pick of the draft for the Detroit Lions and Frank Ragna, offensive center slash interior offensive lineman out of Arkansas. When you look at his athleticism data, he had a 99.25 explosive lower body strength score, 95.78 speed score, and a 49.42 flexibility score. When you look at his overall data, does not quite have all-pro potential at the center position because of how low his flexibility testing is, but definitely has Pro Bowl potential and even starter potential in terms of that position. And when you look at the averages of the position, very good explosiveness, very good speed, and the only issue is kind of the flexibility testing. I think in many ways, when you look at the average Pro Bowl score and average starter score, his flexibility testing doesn't look that bad, but ultimately that's the only sort of Achilles heel with him. Very explosive, very fast, very good shot to become a multiple Pro Bowl center, but all-pro potential is just a little iffy with him. But I do think that because of how explosive he is and how fast he is for his size, that it may not even matter. So again, we'll see what happens with him, but I think overall you're looking at a very high-quality interior offensive lineman where the ultimate upside, like the high-end upside, like the all-pro potential, he may not reach those heights, but at the same time, he is really explosive and very fast to where it may not matter that his flexibility testing is that average, I guess, when it comes to his overall profile. Then, of course, we get to Carryon Johnson, running back out of Auburn. When you look at his production data, he had a 60.35 market share production score, which doesn't really hit the All-Pro threshold, 5-time Pro Bowl threshold, but does hit at least the 3-time Pro Bowl threshold when you look at his production data. When you look at the average All-Pro score, average Pro Bowl score, and average starter score, Carryon Johnson looks closer to a starter than he does a Pro Bowl or All-Pro player. And when you look at his athleticism traits, he had a 90.73 explosive lower body strength score, 65.37 speed score, and 58.96 flexibility score. When it comes to the running back position, you want running backs that have at least one 79 or higher athleticism trait in order to hit All-Pro, so Pro Bowl potential, and Carryon Johnson has at least one of those traits. So again, when you look at Carryon Johnson, you're looking at a running back that doesn't have All-Pro production or 5-time Pro Bowl production, but definitely has 3-time Pro Bowl production and has very good athleticism traits. I think there is a chance that Carryon Johnson becomes a multiple Pro Bowl running back, but he definitely has a couple question marks because of his production data. Then, of course, we get to Tracey Walker, defensive safety out of Louisiana Lafayette. When you look at his production data, he had a 91.30 solo tackle score, 69.04 interception score, and 85.12 pass deflection score. Based on his overall data, he looks more like a Pro Bowl safety than a All-Pro safety because of his interception data, but still pretty decent all-around profile when you look at it. When you look at the averages at the position, he looks pretty close to a Pro Bowl to starter, strong safety, when you look at his overall production data. And when you look at his athleticism traits, 37.06 in terms of explosiveness, 72.69 in terms of speed, and 62.80 in terms of flexibility for his size. In many ways, Tracey Walker is kind of like Jesse Bates with a cheaper price tag. Very similar athlete, better production than Jesse Bates, especially when it comes to pass deflection data. And I think in many ways, Tracey Walker has a very good shot to become a long-term starter, to at least a fringe Pro Bowl player because of some of his production traits. I think it's more likely he just becomes a long-term starter, but definitely a pretty solid all-around profile when it comes to production and when it comes to athleticism traits. And of course, you get to DeShawn Hand, interior defensive lineman out of Alabama. When you look at his production data, 25.24 in terms of solo tackle data, 24.95 in terms of sack data, and 28.65 in terms of tackle for loss data. Nowhere near the All-Pro threshold or Pro Bowl threshold when it comes to his Pro Bowl, production traits, and not even near the starter threshold in terms of his solo tackle data and his TFL data. So that's the only sort of concern. It's really not productive When you look at the averages, this kind of puts things into perspective, honestly. You know, the All-Pro average, the Pro Bowl average, the starter average. In fact, the vast majority of All-Pro and Pro Bowl and starter interior defensive linemen are above average in terms of production, and DeShawn Hand is woefully below average. So he does have a lot of question marks when it comes to his production data. And then, of course, you get to his athleticism traits, 70.63 in terms of explosiveness, 92.58 in terms of speed, and 41.72 in terms of flexibility for his size. Definitely has at least all-pro potential athleticism traits, but he doesn't have the production to match those traits. So in many ways, I think DeShawn Hand is someone who definitely, as a rotational guy, could find a home and could find a role, and maybe fringe starter potential if he develops. But definitely not someone that I see as a consistent 5-time, 3-time All-Pro, 3-time Pro Bowl type. So again, this is a guy that may take some time to develop into a starter, and at best, you're looking at a backup rotational guy for most of his career. Then, of course, you get to Terrell Crosby, offensive lineman out of Oregon. When you look at his data, he had a 72.79 explosive lower body strength score, 56.77 speed score, and 48.24 flexibility score. In many ways, he has Pro Bowl potential athleticism traits versus All-Pro potential athleticism traits. And the only big issue with him is when you look at the averages. You know, when you look at the average explosion, speed, and flexibility scores, he's basically below what the average speed score is and average flexibility score is in terms of a long-term starting tackle at the next level. So I think there is potential that Crosby can become a long-term starting tackle to even fringe Pro Bowl tackle, but definitely has some question marks in terms of his athleticism traits when it comes to speed and when it comes to balance for his size. And then lastly, we get to Nick Boden, fullback out of San Diego State. I don't really do much data when it comes to fullbacks in that position in general, so I can't really say much about this pick other than he's a fullback. So, you know, again, we'll see what happens with him, but I do think that this is an interesting direction that the Lions may be heading in to get a fullback here and all those other sort of factors. So overall, when you look at the Lions draft pick, I think the biggest thing that this draft class says about the Lions is they want to run the football. You know, they got a very explosive, very fast, interior offensive lineman in Frank Ragna to start the class off. They get Terrell Crosby, who's more of a mauler type, explosion, like hit kind of quick type guy. You get a fullback. You get Carryon Johnson, who's kind of a power back, in terms of explosiveness. So I think that's the direction the Lions are going with this draft class. They're trying to get mean, bigger, explosive, mauler type guys. And do a couple little patchwork stuff in terms of their defense. So I'm very excited to see what they do ultimately with this particular draft class. But not a like they could have done better with certain picks. When it comes to running backs, there were some running backs that were better than the ones that they took. There definitely were some. DeShawn Hand is definitely a question mark because of his production data. But I do think that this is a draft class that has some successful players in it. You've got successful players at later rounds as well. I think Terrell Crosby has a very good chance to become a long-term starter, which is something you don't always expect to get from that part of the draft. Ultimately, we'll see what happens here, but I do like this class. I think there's a lot of solid stuff here. I do see the direction they're going with it, and I think ultimately this draft should pan out pretty well. And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. Hit that notification button so you're always reminded when another video of mine drops. And I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.